Now, meantime, of course, the Prime Minister is briefly back in the country because he spends oh so much time overseas. An Airbus Albo is a little tag that is sending the lefties crazy, which is why we're going to keep doing it. Some analysis has come via the Adelaide Advertiser that the amount of kilometres travelled by the Prime Minister since he took over from Scott Morrison is now enough to fly to the moon. Analysis by the Advertiser shows that on return from the APEC visit, he will have travelled 385,586 kilometres, further than that's more than the 384,400 kilometres it takes to fly from the Earth to the moon. Meantime, that Airbus Albo thing, it really does annoy the lefty media. The people that want to run the protection racket, the ones who want to say nothing to see here when it comes to transparency, the ones that want to say nothing to see here when it comes to the Australian dollar being down substantially on where it was before this government took to office, the people who want to say nothing to see here when it comes to real wages and nothing to see here when it comes to the spending of the government, let alone the 35% of the federal budget that is now spent on welfare, the highest of all time. Well, they're coming to the defence of the Prime Minister. That, of course, the Prime Minister should be travelling, and he should be travelling to do his bit as Australia is a middle power. But after I've just told you that the Australian Prime Minister in less than 2 years has flown the equivalent of Earth to the moon, you can write as many pieces as you want in the Sydney Morning Herald, and they can be from the former BBC guy or the great Liberal hater in the press gallery, but the reality is people can see this for what it is, which is a Prime Minister who is distracted. Whether they want to admit it or not, he was distracted by spending $450 million on a referendum that we knew months in advance was going to tank. He's spending hundreds of millions of dollars when it comes to foreign aid, which are all about pushing back on China, but we all know China's going to have more money in the long term. And again, otherwise friendly parts of the media that have often run cover for the Prime Minister can't hide on the issue of cost of living. In fact, in news.com.au today, they decided to write that Anthony Albanese returns to Canberra amid brewing political tensions. And it's not just about whether the left wing of the Labor Party is going to get its way about Palestine versus Israel. And of all people, Jackie Lambie said on Monday that Australians are growing increasingly desperate over unaffordable cost of living, arguing that the Labor government has lost its footing. Quote, "These guys in charge of the country, they say they would make it better, and quite frankly, we're not seeing it at all. Completely lost the plot." Look, she'll vote for most of the increases in spending, and she doesn't suggest many things to cut in spending, but still, at least someone is saying something inside the parliament that the rest of the media generally pay attention to, because when she's not saying things like this, she's often bashing conservative side of politics. But welcome to the world of Albonomics. Welcome to the reality here that you pay more while the government looks better, and you're supposed to say, "Thank you, Prime Minister." Daily Mail today. It's not easy under Albanese how Albo's time as Prime Minister has lived up to the opposition's election taunt. Let me just read directly from what they wrote today. Since Mr Albanese's government was elected in May 2022, Australians have suffered from high inflation, with the cost of essential commodities such as gas, power, groceries surging. That has also caused wages to fall in real terms. Inflation is running hot as the national population grows at the fastest pace since the 1950s due to the high immigration. More than 400,000 people moving to the country in the year to August. Meanwhile, Australians are battling a housing shortage and have the world's highest mortgage stress and debt levels. The Reserve Bank, just last week, of course, lifted for the 13th time in 18 months, driving up the cost of mortgages. I'm glad to see what we've been saying since day one was true then, is true now. This was the central promise of Labor in opposition. No ifs, no buts, no asterisks, no footnotes. The promise was direct. A Labor government will lower the cost of living. Instead, for most people, it hasn't been easy under Albanese.